Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream this morning. Going to do a Q&A here, answering your questions. So good morning, or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. So welcome to At Home Songwriting. My name is Chad Shank. For those of you who might be new here, I am a songwriter, a music producer. I'm a songwriting teacher. I teach for Berklee College of Music Online. I also have At Home Songwriting, where I lead online workshops and lead my membership courses and all kinds of different things. So my background, I've been writing songs since middle school. I started writing songs for way back when I was a kid, had my own record label and music production company in high school. I worked in commercial radio for a long time. Have done all kinds of different things with sync, and then now teaching songwriting for over the last 10 years. So lots of stuff in my background, and hopefully here to help you write better songs. So write like a professional at home. So we've got some people showing up here. Angel, hey Angel, good morning. Welcome to the live stream. Michael's here too, so welcome. Dory, great to have you on board as well. Michelle is here. So we've got all kinds of people joining. So good morning. Jeanette holding down Chi-Town. She says, yay, hey y'all. We also have Secret Squirrel. I believe that is that's our friend Jay as well. So Guten Morgen from New England. Welcome. Deborah's here. Welcome, Deborah. Good to meet you and have you on board as well. And then we also have good morning from Arizona. So Bradford Knights, welcome. We also have showing up here Marquita. So welcome. Ron's here holding down Massachusetts. Hey, Ron. And then Nick's here too, another fellow Minnesotan. So for those of you who are not familiar with where I'm located, I'm actually located in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we're up here in holding down the Midwest. So welcome to this live stream. So this is all about answering your questions today. So put your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to answer those. And have some fun conversation about songwriting issues, anything that you're struggling with, anything that you're curious about, what's going on in your world. Like, what are you working on? Do you have projects that you're doing? Kind of what's happening there. I also should introduce my friend Joey in the back. He's sleeping. He likes to sleep in what we call the music room. So this is my little home studio where I write and record all of my stuff, and then Joey likes to be back on the little couch there. So welcome everybody. So there is a little bit of a delay from when you type to when I see the chat. So definitely if you ask a question and I don't get to it right away, sometimes there is a little bit of a delay. But I thought this morning, before we have some questions coming in, I wanted to play you a song. And for those of you who have been watching my YouTube channel, the last couple of weeks, I posted a 2-part series of a video where I have worked on a song, starting with the music first. And then from the music, I did mumble singing. I created a melody. And then I didn't film the lyric process. But I wrote a song called Keep Love. So I thought what I would do here is play the song for you as questions come in. But if you haven't watched the other videos, watch it after this live stream. But I am going to share here and give you a listen of one of these songs that I've written. So this is called Keep Love.
Some say the stars, they can align. I think it was the universe's time. You complete my weirdness, bring joy to my life. I fill in your blanks, there's a reason we're so right. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to harder times, I'll hold you tight. It's a magic life when you keep me in line. I don't need to travel to quench my soul. Quiet nights with you is what makes this whole. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to keep love. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to keep love. You are my safe place, you are my refuge. I can't see any future without spending this ride with you. You are my safe place, you are my refuge. I can't see any future without spending this ride with you. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to keep love. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to keep love. The world runs hard and the world runs fast. Yeah. We don't have to keep up, no, we just have to keep love. The world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, yeah. We just have to keep love. And the world runs hard, yeah, and the world runs fast. We don't have to keep up, we just have to keep love. Oh, we just keep love, keep love, keep love. We can keep love.
Unmute here. There we go. So that is Keep Love. So if you were watching some of the video of the videos that I posted, you saw that it started with music, and then I came up with the melody, and then I wrote lyrics to the melody as well. So thanks for listening, and thanks for your comments there. I saw Michelle had a question for me in the chat, and if you have questions, definitely post them as well. But Michelle's wondering, what are things that I do personally to get inspired to write more? So great question. So for me, I've written a ton of songs. I write a lot. I'm always kind of working in songwriting. I'm usually reviewing what some of my students are doing. I'm working with different people as, you know, their mentor, their coach. Um, for my own personal writing, I think inspiration sometimes comes from listening to other people's work. Like for instance, yesterday, the new Lady Gaga album came out, her album called Mayhem. And like some of those songs made me feel inspired. So it made me want to be creative, right? So I kind of had that creative spark. But I think what Michelle's asking is, what are some things that I do to find ideas, or what are ideas that I do to keep sort of that creativity going? Um, I I personally like to do little, I guess you could call them writing sprints. Um, I usually don't have a huge block of time where I can sit down and spend, you know, 2, 3 hours writing a song. So a lot of times what I will do, Michelle, is do little writing exercises. So I will maybe pick an object or maybe pick an emotion, and then I will write about it from a lyric perspective. I'll write about it for 5 or 10 minutes and then sort of scan that and see if there's any titles or hooks or any ideas that can come from it. I also, we've talked about it in some of my other workshops that some of you have been in. I made 200 note cards that have little idea sparks on them. So what I did was I went through a bunch of songs that I like and a bunch of hit songs, and I wrote down little, like, I would say, sparks, like creativity sparks or little song sparks, just topics that I know have been successful in other songs. And then I can just randomly pick a card and see what the topic might be. So for instance, this card I just picked, you can't see it, but it says lost. So, you know, maybe I'll write about lost. Like what does lost mean? like lost could mean you can't find your way. Lost also might mean something that's missing, right? Like I lost something. I don't have to be lost. Um, Being lost is sort of an adjective, right? But lost can be a verb as well, where you lost something. So thinking about that, um, like, and then you can pull multiple cards too. Like this other one is so attracted to you. So what could I combine those two things, right? Like I'm so attracted to you that I'm getting lost in my thoughts. Or, I'm so attracted to you, but what will I lose if I end up being with you? Um, from a music perspective, I will learn chord progressions of other songs that I like. I think as songwriters, we worry a lot about music theory and we worry about like what chord should I use for which emotion and what is the best way to do it or what is the right way to do it. Um, I think for me, the way that I learned chords was really like taking songs that I liked and moods that I liked, and then learning what progressions created those moods. And then I learned to play those on my own. And then the next step is to write a song of my own on top of those chords, right? So nobody owns the chords. You can use the same chord progression as another song. Um, and it teaches you a lot about what emotions come from which chords, and then try things like what happens if you speed it up, what happens if you slow it down, what happens if you change the chord order. um I think the work inspires me, Michelle. I think the inspiration comes from the perspiration, right? So to get ideas, I think I need to just start and then see where that goes, and don't be so caught up on a result right away. I think sometimes we get in our head the type of song we want to end up with. And I think what causes us to stop is the fact that we a lot of times can't get to what we think in our head. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because where it ends up going might be a better place than you originally thought as well. So I think learning to serve the song is very important. Um, so hopefully that answers your question, Michelle. Um, I see some other questions here in the chat. So, um, Secret Squirrel says, with new policies preventing copyright of AI written songs, do you know of any effective utilitarian AI implements to help free up creative writing time? Um, yeah, here's the thing about AI. A lot of people are using it. Um, I have a my thought on AI is if you are using it to generate parts of your song, you are cheating and it's not helping you, right? Like I hear a lot of people saying, "Well, I'm a lyricist and I wouldn't be able to put my words to music if I didn't use AI." Okay, fine, but you are not writing that song, right? Like you are literally having something else do it. And for me being a songwriting teacher, I don't think you learn anything by doing that. And even when people talk about AI as a tool, a lot of times I think they're using it as a crutch and more as a toy. So I'm not a fan of AI as far as using it to generate things for you. Now, how I do like to use AI is like a dictionary. So asking it for things like what are 50 words related to mountain climbing, right? And then it'll give you 50 words. And then what are 50 words about falling in love? And then you could have, you then take those words and combine them and see what interesting ideas you come up with. I think a generative AI at its core creates very average things because it's only taking what it learns and it's doing an average of everything. So people who say, "Well, it creates better songs than I could write on my own," that should be just a sign for you to say that you have more to learn, right? So, like, if AI writes better than you do, that's a problem. You don't want AI to write better than you because that means you're not even writing to up to the average, right? So that's my personal thought on AI. Um, uh, Billy says suggestions on how much free writing to do. That's a really good question. So I am free writing, so I do a lot of free writing. I find that free writing takes my head out of that weird place we go when we sit down to write lyrics, right? There's this thing that happens where the second we start to write lyrics, we all of a sudden start thinking in a different way than we normally do. And we start saying things in a weird poetic way instead of just saying it how we say it. I think free writing is a process that happens in almost every single song that I write at some point, right? Like if I need to come up with verse material, I'll write from my senses. If I need to come up with chorus material, I'll write from emotions. Because the usually the verses have more concrete details, um, and then the chorus is more emotional. So the answer of how much to do, I think it depends on what your goal is. But if you're doing it as a practice, I'd say at least 5 to 10 minutes a day, but then use it as the part of the songwriting process as well. VP Records says, "Hey, what's up? Hey, VP Records, welcome." Michael has a thought here. He says, "You've seen and taught a lot of songwriters. What do you see the best songwriters doing that makes them successful?" Really good question. So, I think what makes songwriters successful, and I think what helps them write the best songs, is understanding how structure supports the meaning. So overall, that's kind of that concept of prosody, right? Like you hear me say it all the time. You hear people like Pat Pattison say it all the time. But I think what makes the best songwriters is people that understand how to get past doing things just because they've always done it that way. And they do it in a way that supports an emotion, right? So think about it from the perspective of why are you using a certain rhyme scheme? Are you using that because you saw another song do it? Or are you using that because that feels the best to what you're trying to say? So I think there's not only what you say, but then how you say it. So I think the really good songwriters have really good ideas. So they have a really good eye and ear for really interesting angles on topics. Um, so there's that part of it, but then they also execute on how to put it together from a structural standpoint. And then I think the people who write the best songs are the ones who have some of the strongest melodies as well. So melodies not an afterthought. Melody is part of the equation that goes into the emotion. So good idea, good lyric structure, good melody, good melodic structure, and then using effective song form to add in sort of that tension and release. I think where people get off track is where they do things to experiment just to experiment and not thinking about it from what effect does this have from an emotional standpoint, because emotion is everything, right? Like that's the whole key of what we're trying to do as writers is we're trying to communicate a feeling and have our listener experience our song without thinking about it. So we're not writing riddles, we're not writing poetry. We don't want them thinking, we want them feeling what we do. So good question. And if you have any other questions or anything, definitely put the questions in the chat. Um, so definitely keep the questions coming. Um, in the chat as well, let me jump back here. So Secret says, sorry, with as few characters there are, it's hard to convey thoughts. I'm asking more the sense of bookkeeping or office admin, record keeping, non-creative. So you're talking about AI for that type of stuff. I use Google Docs for everything, honestly. So I haven't used anything special for that. Um, I just kind of keep everything in one Google Doc, or not the same document, but the same account, I guess you would call it. But good question. Any other questions, or what are some of the struggles that you're running into as writers? Like, are you running into lyric stuff? Are you running into melody stuff? Like, what do you see other writers doing that you don't quite know how to get there, right? Like, how are you working through some of that? What are some of the ways that you're working through improving your songwriting? Um, Let me make sure that there's no other questions that I missed. Um, there was a thought that Bradford had about my song. Um, he was asking why I repeated "The world runs hard, the world runs fast" the second time in the chorus. He gets why I repeated the other lines, but it seems like there could have been new ones. I think that's just personal preference, and I think repetition is important when you're teaching your listener how to sing your song, right? I think in the type of song that it is, a more pop song, a more upbeat, sort of danceable song, repetition becomes important. And I think one of the things that keeps um, songs in people's minds and what delivers the message is repetition, right? So as writers, we start to fear repetition because for some reason, we think it's bad, right? But it's actually something that helps your listener learn the song, and it helps them being able to sing it. Now, I wouldn't repeat a lot in verses, right? But a chorus, you can get away with more repetition, and that's the part that everybody sings. Deb has a question here. So she's trying to decide how and when to use a bridge. So awesome question. So do you need a bridge in every song? So the answer, do you need it? No. So the bridge, the idea of a bridge, or a bridge is a section, right? So a bridge is a song section. Song sections have their own job to do, right? So your verses are there to tell the story. They set the scene. They're establishing who, when, where, what, all of those questions that you're answering. So in one of my courses on my website, I talk about how as songwriters, we are like journalists. And when journalists write news stories, they're always using the 5 Ws, right? Who, when, where, why, how, all of those things. So your verses, that's where the story is told. That's where the information is communicated. And then your chorus is the emotional sort of thesis statement summarizing section about why your verses just told us all of those things. So the chorus is more emotional, it's less storytelling, and it's more about an emotional summary. And this is what my song is about. So then the bridge's job is literally to take you somewhere new, right? So think of a bridge as a literal bridge that takes you to somewhere that we haven't been before. And why would you do this? Well, there's sort of an unwritten rule called the rule of two in songwriting. And what that says is, if you've done something twice, don't do it again until you do something different. So by the time you get to a bridge, you've heard verse one, you've heard a chorus, you've heard verse two, and you've heard another chorus. So you've had two verses and two choruses. So your bridge, its job is to add contrast. So from a musical perspective, from a structural perspective, even from a thought process um, perspective, or a content perspective, the bridge can give you a new angle, a new approach. So it's there to do something different than your verses and your chorus. Now, sometimes your song may not need it. Sometimes you may be able to get away with another verse and another chorus, right? Depending on how it's produced or what the sections are doing. But a bridge is really there for contrast. So if you listen, different bridges are doing something completely different than what you've heard before. On this channel, I actually have another video that's all about bridges as well. So definitely check that out. But that's a great question. Thanks, Deb. Gary has something. He says, I write lyrics I like. Separately, I like melodies I like. How do I develop the ability to marry the two? Yeah, so great question. So this is something that I think all of us struggle with at one time or another. And I actually think this is the craft of songwriting, right? So, as songwriters, we're not really poets, we're not really composers, right? We're sort of this interesting mix of music and words. And what we're doing as songwriters is the core of our art is setting words to music. So, where do these two things come together and how do we sort of develop that ability, right? So the thing that brings music and lyric together is rhythm. So lyrics are rhythm and syllables, right? So we speak and we communicate in a pattern of syllables, and melody is pitch and rhythm. So the two things that lyrics and melody have in common is the rhythm. So your melodic rhythm is your lyrical rhythm. So what you practice here then is getting the rhythm down so you're maintaining the natural way that we speak. So what does that mean? So that means we're not saying natural way that we speak, right? The natural way that we speak. Da 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 da, right? So what you're doing is you are learning how to place lyrical rhythm into musical rhythm and musical time. So the first thing you practice is the rhythm, and then you can add different pitches to that rhythm. So the way that you do this is you recite your lyrics to music so you can figure out what's the natural rhythm of the lyric. But if you're starting melody first, then you pay attention to the rhythm and how you would apply that rhythm to the lyrical rhythm. Does that make sense? So there's no like magic key to do this. You just have to process and practice kind of doing it over and over again and start simple, right? Like start with a simple melody that has a simple rhythm and then write lyrics that fit that. And then take lyrics that might have a simple rhythm and make a melody to that. And then eventually you will train your mind to think in rhythm and it will become easier to do it either way, right? I think as songwriters, we should know how to set our lyrics to music and we should know how to write lyrics to melody. So even if you're a lyric writer and you're not a musician, you still have the ability to know how to recite your lyric to a metronome or in rhythm. So even if you're not a musician, you have that ability. So I would say, Gary, that's the focus is really learning about rhythm and how those two things play together. Um, Kind of a related question. VP Record says, are vocal exercises good for improving singing abilities? Yes. So the more you practice singing, you can get better. I also think the better you are as a singer, you can start to write better songs because part of our art as songwriters is understanding how lyric sings. So even if we're not the singer of the songs we're writing, it's good to know what flows naturally and what feels good to sing. Some lines just don't sing very well. So yeah, so doing exercises is great. Michael says, are there specific elements that make a pop song today? Um, Not really. Pop. So pop, country, those are really high level genre labels now, right? Like country is not just country. You have more of like the bro country, you have country that's like 90s country, you have country that is more like Jason Isbell and it's more Americana, sort of like country rock. You have more really poppy country. And then pop is the same way, right? Like you have pop that's like K-pop, but then you also have people like Teddy Swims, who's considered pop, but he's nothing like K-pop. And then you have Billie Eilish, who's considered pop, but she's not like those others. So, are there elements that make a pop song? I would say that pop in general is very melody driven and it's very rhythmically driven, more so than other genres. But I think it's hard to put it into a category because there's so many different types of pop. But good question. Ron has a question here. So, question on fragmented versus through written when it comes to flowing your lyrics. You understand it lengthens and shortens the song section, but how and why would you use it? Cool. Good question, Ron. So, there are two types of flow when it comes to lyric. So Ron mentioned them. They're fragmented and through written. So what do these mean? So fragmented means that your lyric is coming to a resolution or it's resolving or stopping motion in the middle of a section. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the other kind, through written, is it's not resolving, it's not stopping, it's not coming to a conclusion in the middle of the section, but it's flowing all the way to the end. So, what would be an example of a fragmented section? So, an example would be couplets. So, if you have two matching lines that rhyme followed by another two lines that rhyme. So your section resolves after that first two lines. So it's AABB, right? So after the AA, those lines are resolving themselves. So they're coming to a close. The BB then starts up again and then resolves again. But if you have a through written section, it is more like ABAB, where it doesn't resolve until you get all the way to the end of your section. So why would you use those? It's a great way to split up thought. So if you have a 4-line section, if you have a 4-line verse, and the whole verse is talking about one topic, you would use through written because it doesn't stop. It doesn't resolve until the end. If you're changing thoughts halfway through the section, then you would use fragmented. That's a pretty basic explanation, but I think that answers what you're saying, Ron. Good question. We have another question here from Angel. So says, I'm trying to write more heavy rock music, but it seems that I always fall back to the safe, easy, soupy ballads. Yeah, so so this is an interesting question because could you set those lyrics and the idea of a soupy ballad to a rock beat or a rock song, right? Like, are you limited by genre in what you write? Not necessarily, but I think if you're trying to write in different genres, I think you need to study the structure and sort of the trends that are happening within a genre. So I like to think of a genre as a vocabulary or an alphabet, right? So if you are wanting to write country songs, you should try to learn the alphabet and the vocabulary. And when I say vocabulary, I'm not saying the lyric. I'm more saying like what's happening from a musical vocabulary standpoint. Like what types of chord progressions are they using? What is the song structure that they're using? Do they use long notes? Do they use short notes? What types of like flow, like back to Ron's question, are they using couplets? Are they using through written? If you want to write in other styles, you have to study those other styles and try to pick out what makes them the style in your mind, right? So Angel, I would say look at other heavy rock songs and what are the topics they're writing about? Are they writing very concrete, detailed, direct, or are they writing more metaphorical and more in kind of abstract thought? A lot of times rock music has more abstract thought, more so than like country music does, because they're exploring different concepts. And a lot of times in rock, the music is playing a different role, right? So you just kind of have to, there's no button to push that turns you into a rock writer, right? You have to study it, you have to imitate for a while, and then you'll start to innovate after that. But good question. Another question from Secret. So I've never truly grasped the term shape in regards to songwriting. You've heard it, or he's heard it often. Is it a general term, or are you actually visualizing? Um, so usually when I'm thinking of the word shape, right, we're thinking of melodic shape. So that means what are the pitches doing? And I think shape comes from the fact that music used to be written down and it would literally be a shape on the page. But we can think about it in the concept of shape where is your melody going up? That's an ascending shape, right? Is it going down? That's a descending shape. You could have a zigzag where the pitches are going up and down. You could have them dip down and dip back up, or dip up and then back down. Um, or you could have them staying steady, right? You could have a static melody. So I think shape to me comes from what is your melody doing? So does it start static and then zigzag and then like really kind of draw on paper what you hear the melody doing? That's how I'd look at shape. Great question from Bradford here. Do you ever blueprint songs? And if I do, what sorts of things do I fill in when doing this? Yes. So I highly recommend you, before you actually start writing lyrics, it's usually a good idea to blueprint or plan or outline what your song is going to be saying and how you are going to develop the concept. So the sooner you can determine this is my hook, meaning this is what my song is about, this is my title, and this is what I want to tell people, those things become your guidepost on how the song is built. So once you have your hook, once you have your title, that gives you what your chorus is, right? So you have your North Star on where the song is going or what the verses are building up to, right? So how I blueprint is, how do I write in a way that leads to my hook, but also changes the meaning as the song goes on. So sometimes people call this recoloring the chorus, where each verse is taking us deeper into a topic, but the same words in your chorus mean something more each time you hear it. So what I'm filling in is really point of view, right? Who's singing? Who are they singing to? Why are they saying it? Also, I think of, where is this happening? When is it happening? And what's happening? So that would be setting up like first verse, and then it leads to the hook. Second verse, then I try to see, is there a way to advance the W? So if my first verse is about the other person, right? Like think of the song Back to December by Taylor Swift. I'm going to pull up the lyrics so we can take a look at this together. See if I can share my screen. So if we look at Back to December, the first verse is saying, I'm so glad you made time to see me. How's life? Tell me, how's your family? I haven't seen them in a while. You've been good, busier than ever. We small talk, work in the weather. Your guard is up, and I know why. So that's the first verse. If we jump to the second verse, then the second verse is now going from talking more about the you, right? So in the first verse, she's saying, you are, how have you been? What have you been up to? In the second verse, she's changing the who. She's changing it to, I haven't been sleeping, staying up late, playing back myself leaving. When your birthday passed and I didn't call. And then I think about the summer. I watched you laughing and I loved you in the fall, right? So she's now changing the who, she's changing the when, and kind of what she's singing about. But the chorus stays the same, right? So the chorus is saying, so this is me swallowing my pride, standing in front of you, saying I'm sorry for that night. And I go back to December all the time. It turns out freedom ain't nothing but missing you, wishing I'd realized that or what I had when you were mine. I'd go back to this December, turn around and change my own mind. I go back to December all the time. So now in the first verse, she had you. In the second verse, she had I, the me. But then in the bridge, she now talks about, but if we loved again. So she went from you, me, us. So that is advancing the who and the what in that story. So when I'm outlining a song, I'm thinking, how can I advance the W's and how can I make it still lead to the same chorus, right? So I might be changing the perspective, I might be changing the situation, and I might be changing the time frame that it's happening, or sometimes even changing the location, so changing the where as well. So hopefully that's helpful on the blueprint side, but that's what I'm actually doing. Other questions here. Gary says, how do I put chords to a catchy melodic idea? So good question. So what you have to do is you have to figure out what notes you're singing, right? So if you have your melody, but you don't have chords, you have to try to think of what mood is this melody. So the first question you ask is, what does it feel like from a mood perspective? Does it feel upbeat? Maybe you want to start with a major chord then. If it's more pensive or reflective, you might want to start with a minor chord. Um, Figure out what key you're in first, and then that you have basically 6 kind of useful chords to work from. You have the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6, right? So your job then is to figure out what notes you're singing and do they fall in those chords, and do you want those notes to be in the chords? Because sometimes a nice tension is created when the notes that you're singing are actually not in the chord. But you just have to experiment, like what sounds good. So I would sing what you're doing and I'd start on the 1 chord and I'd just play the 1 chord. Does that sound right? And then if that sounds right, then what's the next chord? You've got 5 other chords that you can try, and you just experiment until you hit the one that sounds like you hear in your head, right? So there's not any switch that you flip that says these are the chords that you use. It 100% comes down to how does it feel and does it match what you're looking to do? So great question. David has a question here. I'm trying to get out of the loop. How do you write A and B parts? Uh, my issue is my B part either sounds too much like A or nowhere close. So as far as what you're talking about, are you talking about sections here? Or are you talking about melodic lines? If you're talking about sections, um, a lot of times you are changing the chord progression, you're changing the melody, you might be changing the lyric structure. Um, those things are things that you would change, but a lot of times you're staying in the same key. So you would have like the even though you're changing a lot of things, it still would sound like it's somewhat connected, right? Without hearing an example, it's hard to kind of say what exactly is causing it to sound too much alike or nowhere close. Too much alike might be the way that you're playing the chords. They might be the chords that you're playing. It might be, are you changing chords at the same places? Like, are you changing chords every measure? You could try changing chords twice a measure. You could change chords, less frequently. So maybe 1 chord for 2 measures. Those are a lot of things that you'd have to look at. Let's see what else we have here. So we have from M says, I can write lyrics and melodies, but I get very indecisive when committing to a melodic idea. It gets in the way of my ability to progress and I get stuck. Any tips for this? Um, I mean, I think this is something that you would have to ask yourself why you get stuck. And I think not committing to a melodic idea might mean that you just need to pick one and run with it, right? Like actually commit and not judge it yet. So, um, I would say that your goal is if you get stuck, is to try to finish a song and get it just good enough, right? Like don't worry about it being perfect, just get it done and stick with the first thing that comes to mind and finish it and then put it away. Because a lot of times we need to write faster than our critic comes out, right? So the faster you can write something, the faster you can get a full draft, which usually means you have two verses, a chorus, a bridge. Like you basically have the ingredients of a song. Stop there and then put it away for a while and then come back to it. And then you actually have something to edit instead of trying to commit and not commit in the middle of the writing process. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as writers is we get caught up in judging what we're doing in the middle of the creation process. And I think the more we can go from the creation or the more we can split creation from editing, the better we can be for sure. Question: what is my favorite genre? I'm definitely a pop fan. I would say I grew up in the 80s, so anything top 40. I love 80s, 90s music. Um, I love pop songs. I love production, but then I also love country songs and I also love singer-songwriter songs. I would say the things that make me like songs are clever lyrics, and when I say clever, that doesn't mean, like, novelty songs, that means, like, really good ideas, good, concepts, a good payoff, and then I really like melody. Melody, I think, is super important for me, so, it's really any genre that has good lyrics and good melody. Um, Dory asked a question going back to blueprinting. So blueprinting, yes, it's the same concept as song mapping. Different people call it different things. But yeah, same topic. Let's see. So we have other questions here. Here's a good question. So I'm learning to rap. Can you suggest how I can improve my flow in rap? Yes. So um rap sometimes gets some people say, well, rap songs, there's no melody, so it's not a song. But I disagree with that because melody is rhythm and pitch. And I think the most important ingredient in melody is the rhythm. You can always change the pitches, but if the rhythm's not there, it's usually not a good melody, right? So rap is really just taking the pitch out of the equation, but not completely because you change your tone of voice, right? And that's pitch. But how do you improve your flow? I think is you practice reciting words in rhythm and you start simple, right? So you start with reciting things to quarter notes. So if you're in 4/4 time, you would just like you're reciting things on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then try eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just say words on those beats and then work your way up to like 16th notes where it's 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a ba 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 and teach yourself how to sense where those rhythmic segments or where the variations are. And also, I think learn other people's work. I think being able to recite other people's work helps you train your mind into understanding the relationship between the content and the rhythm. So, um, it all comes down to feel, right? So start simple And sometimes I would say it would depend on if you're writing the lyric first and then you're trying to set it to music. Sometimes that doesn't give you the sort of the flow that you want. Sometimes you have to actually come up with a rhythm or just dummy words over a beat and then go back and put lyrics to it later. And what I mean by that is kind of like if you have a beat going and you're just like ba 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 ba, right? And then you take those ba-bas and you assign lyrics to them later. So start with the feel and then apply the content later. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's see what we got here. So is writing song different from production? And what do I think about this personally? So this is a good question because in today's world, production can be part of the songwriting process, right? So sometimes you may be inspired to write a song from a drum beat. You may be inspired to write a song from a sample. Um, my personal opinion is whatever way a song shows up, you should know how to develop it or how to apply concepts and how to use it. So is songwriting different from production? It is for a lot of people because a lot of times they'll write a song with their instrument and they'll have words and music, right? And then sometimes they'll produce the song later. But then there's also people who produce the song as it's happening. I do it both ways. So I produce as I go. I also will write and then produce later. I would say that it's completely personal choice, and you don't have to be a producer to be a songwriter, and you don't have to be a songwriter to be a producer, but there's some people who are both or some people that are either. So, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. What is a payoff and what is the turn? What are some ways to write songs that pays off or has a flip, or a turn at the end? Um Yeah, so a payoff is really the hook, right? Um, it's the line that sort of leads up and just kind of like that's what everything we're talking about, that's where it goes. Um, I'm drawing a blank on uh some examples of a payoff, but it's usually in country music, it's the last line in a chorus, right? Like it's kind of that unique play on words that it just feels good when it happens. Some people will call it the flip, right? Like flip is where you're kind of um there's a song by Kaylee Hammock called Small Town Hypocrite. And in the bridges, she talks about swore we'd be running, running, running. And if you listen to that song, the word running takes different meaning. It takes on a different meaning each time she says it. So it means different things. So an example would be if you flip a noun to a verb, right? So sometimes the words are the same, but they mean something different. So it gives you that little wordplay zing. And that to me is the flip. That's a little payoff. That's a little hook that happens. And I'm totally drawing a blank because I'm not in the mindset to answer that right now, but hopefully that makes sense. Um, where does accompaniments fit into my process? Do I start with it or come with it after I have a melody? How would you approach the latter? So good question from Pulp Mystic. Like a lot of us, I a lot of times start with the accompaniment and then I come up with a melody to that, and then I write lyrics to that. If you watch the videos on this channel from the last couple of weeks, you'll see that I start with music and then go from there. How would I approach coming up with chords and accompaniment after I have a melody? We talked about this before on this, but really just finding the key that you're in, finding the notes, and then experimenting with what color of chord supports what you're trying to say. So sometimes it's literally just experimenting. Do I want a major chord? Do I want a minor chord? What chord in the key do I want? Do I want to start on the 1? Do I start on the 4? Do I start on the 5? Where do I start? and you literally just experiment until you get what you're hoping for. And I'm going to take a drink because I'm talking a lot. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Let's go to Billy. Billy says, this week I did free writing with a new co-writer. A good hook or title didn't jump out at me, so I had to just make the decision and finish something. May revisit it later. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Somebody says, for an example, what I was talking about is for Elise, the music's always changing and evolving. How would I go about doing this? Yeah, I'm probably going to get slapped for this, but I'm not familiar with what's happening in that music. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, but usually in songs, there is some form of motif or there's some form of like some repetitive like melodic thing that is developed. So use melodic development techniques. So, you can repeat things. You can repeat things exactly. You can repeat things and vary it. You can use what's called like segmenting, or where you're taking just part of what is played and then repeating just part of it. So that creates a new figure. You can take the same rhythm and put different pitches to it. You can play it in retrograde. So you're playing the same rhythm, but you're playing it backwards. You can take the same rhythm and change all the notes. Sequences where it's the same rhythm, but the notes are different. So you're just moving up or down the scale. So there's a lot of different ways that you can work to develop the process. Somebody asked a question about children's songs. I don't write children's songs, so I don't know for sure what that would be. Yeah, I would say with children's songs, you're really trying to be kind of funny, humorous, easy, saying thing that they could sing. David says, how do I get a drum track established? So there's a few ways you can do this. So you can either use a loop or use your DAW that might have some kind of a loop or something in it. Or you just play it. I play it on the keyboard. So I just, play a simple pattern. Starting with drums, the easiest way to do it is go, in 4/4 time. You have the kick drum on the 1 and the 3, and the snare is on the 2 and the 4. So like boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka. You say you feel like you have to arrange the song completely to know the length of the drum track. Not necessarily. I think I would encourage you to think in sections, right? So I would say you think of what's the beat doing in your verse, and then what's the beat doing in the chorus, what's the beat doing in the bridge. It's usually not I guess I don't think it's good to look at the song as a whole from like start to finish. I think the best songs are built by sections. And what I mean by that is you are establishing each section to have its own identity. So when you move to a new section, your listener knows that I'm not in a verse anymore. Now I'm in a different part of the song, right? So by doing that, you can use things like contrast and repetition, and it creates like tension and release in what's happening. As Joey, my dog, is flipping around in the back. Some really great questions. Keep them coming in the chat. Also, if you want to check out some of the free online courses that I have, I've got some guides on different songwriting exercises. I've got a free course on rhyme. Once you finish the free courses, I would highly encourage you to check out my Pro Writer membership. It's a monthly premium membership where we meet weekly to do weekly workshops and weekly classes. And then I give writing assignments, writing exercises, and we have a lot of fun just interacting with other songwriters. And I give feedback on what you're writing, and you get peer feedback and support as well. So go to athomesongwritingcourses.com for that. So definitely check that out. So who's my inspiration in music? So yeah, so I have quite a few different people who inspire me. I think growing up, Prince was a huge influence, being from Minneapolis, where I live. I was also a huge Janet Jackson fan. I was very much influenced by Babyface as a writer and producer, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis. Um, as I got older, Max Martin. I still study what Max Martin does with melodies. Um, Jason Isbell, John Mayer. Trying to think of, there's so many people that Stevie Wonder. A lot of people inspire me for sure. And there's a lot of people that if you learn what they've done, it can help you make your songs better too. Cool question. So Gary says, some of my favorite songs have an accompaniments that are essential to the song. How do I develop the ability to create memorable accompaniments? So some of this is arranging, right? So arranging is related to, but also separate from songwriting, right? So a lot of times a song or a songwriter is really just a voice and one instrument, right? So it's really just the lyrics, the vocal melody, and then there's chords that are being accompanied by one instrument. So part of what you're doing as a writer is you're coming up with the harmonic rhythm and you're coming up with a harmonic movement, which means the chords, the chord progression. But when it comes to how do you create the arrangement and what do you do as far as like what are some other instruments and things, I think that gets more into arrangement. And that's something that you have to just sort of learn from other songs, right? So if you look at the songs that you like, what are the parts that they have? What are those parts doing? How are those parts playing off the chord progressions? But as a songwriter, talking strictly from a songwriting perspective, I don't think you necessarily need to know all of those things unless you're also producing your own stuff. And then the way that I taught myself production is just imitate the songs that I like. Lauren says, I find the hardest thing is finding interesting chord progression so that my songs don't sound alike. Any suggestions for finding interesting chords? So, yes. So I think this is common, Lauren. One of the things is to remember that your song is not created from your chords. So I hear people saying all the time, I want to write better songs, so I need to have all these different chords. And when I hear that, I know that that many times people are thinking of chords in a different role than what they should be. So your chords should be there to color your melody and your lyrics. So think of actors are the melody, and then the lyrics are the script, right? So going back, so the actors in a live performance, melody, the lyrics are the scripts, are the lights and the stage. So what your chords are doing is just giving a vibe to the melody and the lyrics. So your song is really not the chords. So having quote unquote interesting chord progressions is, to me, if you're thinking about making complicated chord progressions, I think you're looking at it in a way that can kind of steer you in the wrong direction. Because if your chords are interesting and your chords are doing a whole bunch of stuff, no one's going to pay attention to the lyric. So if you want your lyrics and you want people to pay attention to the message, you have to think about the chords as just a mood changer. So the chords are just light. So what I would suggest is learning chord progressions that work and understanding what emotion or what mood they paint, right? Like think of how many millions of effective songs there are that only use the 1, 4, and 5, right? It's not about the chords, it's about the melody and the lyric. The chord is just there to set the mood. So finding interesting chord progressions, I think, is not necessarily the right way to think about it, but it's learning what progressions create what mood, if that makes sense. Mel says, I remember Fiona Apple said once she became a musician to express herself, has the same hunger to express yourself and protest against things you don't like. Yeah. I mean, definitely as writers, we have the opportunity to protest for sure. Question here is, can I explain destination writing? I write, but after half of a song, I don't know what or how to write. So destination writing is basically sense-based about a person, a place, or a time. And Andrea Stolpe came up with the phrase destination writing. She's one of my mentors, teachers, and a friend of mine as well. Destination writing is where you write about or from the perspective of a person. Sometimes it's not you. Also, writing about a time frame, writing about a location, trying to focus on the senses. So that gives you material that you can build on. Um, After half of a song, you don't know what to write. So this is where the outlining comes into play, right? So I would suggest trying to figure out what is the story you're telling, who is it happening to, who's the singer singing to, why are they singing? If you find that you run out of things to write after half of the song, that means you might be saying too much in the first half of the song. So what I would encourage you to do is look back at what you've written and see if you can go deeper into any of those thoughts and take some of the things that you have in the first half and put it into the second half, right? So maybe there's something that you're talking about that you can go deeper in and then move the next part further in the song. So I think that would be something to look at. Um, if I write a song for my lover, will she finally accept me, or should I start a GoFundMe? um, that depends on the song, right? See if it works in your situation. Um, let's see. So, how is arranging and harmonic movement? Do I feel like with lyrics interesting to find, hard to set the thing up and let it unfold? So you're saying you find it hard to find chords that fit with lyrics. So again, I think the best way that I learned was to find songs that communicate the emotion that you think your lyric has, right? So I would use other songs as a template. I would think of like, what is my lyric and sort of what emotion am I trying to communicate? And then I would look for other songs that are effective at communicating that emotion. And then I would start by copying that chord progression because nobody owns the chords. Chords are just chords. What makes a song is the melody and the lyric. And again, the chords are there to set the vibe. They set the tone, they set the emotion. So you will then take the songs that work and experiment with those chord progressions and see if that fits with what your lyric is saying or what emotion you're trying to communicate. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. It just depends on what emotion you're trying to communicate. It says, is it cheating if you have no musical knowledge, and is it natural to be inspired by music from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s? Yeah, I think whatever music moves you, it's totally cool. Is songwriting cheating if you have no musical knowledge? No. Anybody can write songs. If you can sing a little bit, if you can talk, if you can talk, you can write lyrics. If you can talk, you can usually sing a little bit. So you don't have to be a musician to be able to write songs, because again, the song is usually the melody and the lyrics. But great questions. I wanted to let everybody know too that if you go to athomesongwritingcourses.com, I do have some free guides. So if you haven't gone there to sign up, there's also an online community where you can join the community and post songs in there for peer-to-peer review. We do different songwriting challenges. So coming up this month, March 22nd, we're going to be kicking off a co-writing songwriting challenge where March 22nd, I will give some criteria on a song, and then you will go off, find a co-writer, write a song, and then we'll listen to them coming up in April. So you'll have a month to write a song and get it posted in the community. So go to athomesongwritingcourses.com. So another question here, where do you suggest starting to step into a songwriting career? You're well into learning writing, but you mean the business end of it. So first off, I would say educate yourself as much as you can on how the business works. So if you don't have the book, Everything You Need to Know About Music Business by Donald Passman, start by reading that. So it's by Donald Passman, Everything You Need to Know About Music Business. Also, there's a book called Make Music, Make Money by Eric Beale. Donald Passman, he is a high profile music attorney, and then Eric Beale is a music publisher. Read both of those books. And then if you want to make songwriting a career, I think you have to meet as many people as you possibly can, because there's no such thing as writing one song and sending a song to someone and they pick it up and they sign you and make you a star. Getting a publishing deal really comes from writing with other writers and writing at such a high level that people will find your songs and you will be connected enough to where the publishing companies will want to work with you because you have your own thing going on. So that means you need to co-write a lot. You need to write a lot of songs in general. Professional songwriters write between 3 and 10 songs a week because that's your competition. You have people that are doing nothing but writing song after song after song. So if you want to go into a career, you have to know the right people. I would say a huge step is trying to connect with as many people as you can in the writing centers. If you're a country writer, you have to be connected in Nashville. You kind of have to be present to win. Same with pop. LA is more of a pop city. Nashville's becoming more of a pop city, but LA is where the pop music happens. So if you want to be a songwriter, you need to connect with as many people as you can. And I would also encourage you to start writing with artists, because a lot of times the artist is what companies are looking for. So I would start by reaching out to different independent artists that you find on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you like their music, reach out to them and see if they'll write with you, because your chances of writing with an artist that's already established are slim to none, because they already have their camp. They already know who they're working with. They're kind of self-contained, right? So the key is to rise with the artist. So you want to find the next Taylor Swift and you want to be their co-writer on their way up, right? So being a professional songwriter is an extremely tough thing. And I was talking to a music publisher, Michael August, who is one of my friends, and he is the general manager of Demolition Music in Nashville. And he said that the songwriter cut on a song that has 1 million streams, so a song that has 1 million streams, the cut that the writers get Now, keep in mind, if there's more than one writer, you split this. The writer's cut on 1,000,000 streams is $1,200. So I don't know how many of you can take $1,200, probably divide it by 3 or 4, and make very much money as a songwriter in the streaming industry. So you have to write for radio and TV. So if you want to have a songwriting career, you have to write very commercial, mainstream. And I know a lot of songwriters poo-poo on that, but the reality is that's where the money is. There's no money in streaming. Publishers are struggling. Labels are making money because they sell other things and they sell the artist, but they're not really selling music these days. So definitely I would learn as much as you can about the industry so you know what you're up against. But it's a mountain that people climb all the time, but you just have to be ready to climb. Mel says she just subscribed to my channel. Awesome. Thank you. Everybody else should apply too. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Jeanette has a question here. How long do I decide when to work on a song, like the duration, or give up? So that's an interesting question for me because I don't have a problem finishing songs. I write really fast. And I know the song is done when I can't think of anything else and I've got all of the sections, right? So I know other people will like toil and work on them. I just don't believe that we have a finite number of songs in us. So a song is a song is a song is a song. Pat Pattison says 90% of what we write is not our best 10%. So I just get the song done and it's done. Like I don't really go back and rewrite very much. I'm more excited to write a new song and use what I learned from the other ones, right? So, yeah. Let's see what else we have here. Who are some professional writers that I admire? Yeah, so good question. So Amy Allen, I think, is a great songwriter. I also admire Justin Tranter, Ed Sheeran, other writers, Jason Isbell, Natalie Hemby, Josh Keir. I like a lot of stuff Josh Keir writes. I like a lot of songs that Mark Irwin writes, Steve Seskin. There's so many writers that I like. A lot of times I will find songs based on the writers and the producers more so than the artist. I like artists that write their own songs too, like Lady Gaga. Her new album just came out. I like Kelsey Ballerini. I like artists who started as songwriters too. So like, I'm drawing a blank. Who did All About the Bass? Why am I not thinking of her name? Megan, is it Megan something? Anyway, I can't think of it right now. But yeah, those are some things that, there's another question here. Tell me, is it a normal feeling to be lost in the making of and getting things done? So is it normal to feel lost when you're writing and stuff? I think yes. Megan Trainor, yes. Jeanette said Megan Trainor. There we go. Couldn't think of it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally normal to feel lost in our process, especially if you haven't written a lot of songs, right? Like, I think that's when we're learning to be songwriters. And I think one thing I want to teach on this channel is that you become a better songwriter by learning better process, right? You're not learning how to write the best song. You're learning how to be the best writer, because what you write today is probably not as good as what you're going to write 5 years from now, as long as you keep writing and you keep improving, right? So I think learning the uh, craft and learning the options that you have prevents you from getting as stuck in that lost feeling, because you know that you have 3 or 4 options at every step, and then you just pick the option that works best, right? So you can learn lyric tools, you can learn melodic tools, you can learn chord tools. These are all things that we talk about in the pro writer group, the premium membership that I have with my group. We study these things so you can become a better writer, not just getting better songs. Because it's not about just writing something and then making it the best song. Part of the magic of really great songwriters is they know within the process what options to choose and how do they get to a good final result or not, right? Like some songs just don't fly, whereas others just have a magic too. Lauren says in the old days when people bought records, a song like The Gambler made the writer Don Schlitz millions of dollars. Absolutely. Nowadays, not so much. Album cuts don't make hardly anything now. So you want the single. You have to shoot for the single. And that's what if you want to know what music publishers want, so if you want to know what level of song that people want, if you want to know what will get you through, the key is to watch the charts and study the charts, because the charts are the songs that are making the most money, and what publishers want is money. So you have to follow the money. And if you're a writer that says, I don't care about the charts, I don't want to write songs that are like that, then you might have to come to the conclusion that you're not going to make money with your writing, because it's a fact that those are the songs that are getting the most play. Those are the songs that are getting the most money. Labels, publishers, artists, they don't want anything that's not going to make money unless they're doing it strictly for artistic reasons, which commercially they're not doing it for the art, they're doing it for the money. So it's just something to think about. Yeah, and Lauren says the B side was the same. Absolutely. If you got a B side, that was just like having the single, but now it doesn't really work that way. Michelle's given a plug for the Pro Writer group. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so definitely check out the Pro Writer group. It's at my website again at athomesongwritingcourses.com. And I think I'll answer a couple more questions, and then I think I will wrap that up, or wrap this up here shortly, because I'm starting to lose my voice. Been talking a lot, but this has been fun. I will schedule these again because I think it's great to connect with you live and talk to everybody. So Jeanette, you said that you did that with Billboard. There's definitely formulas. Yeah, music is like fashion, right? Clothes have trends, music has trends. It's all about everything that you put into it, right? So yeah, if you want to stay current, study the charts, but also understand that it takes, sometimes 2-3 years for something to become popular. So by the time it hits the masses, it's already old, right? So you have to figure out, how do you write ahead of the curve and try to figure out what's getting popular sort of underground, what's getting popular from some of the writers and the artists through their social media and things as well. So Sunny the Flying Cat loves the Pro Writer group too. I think that's Shelly. Thanks, Shelly. Mel said I skipped her comment. Was that the one on the Mooney Long? I'm not really familiar with Mooney, so or Money Mooney, not sure. And then you have here, love my content, would love to get your course. My issue is the past organization. Do I have a course that takes you from idea to completion in an organized fashion? Yeah, so definitely in the Pro Writer group, which is the membership, we definitely talk about that. But then in my lyric course, Writing Effective Lyrics, it talks about how do you include what information to complete your lyric. And then I have a whole course on melody that shows you a lot of different concepts that can help you finish those. And then some of the free courses talk about this as well. Um, but yeah, a lot of it is figuring out what works for you, right? So what takes you from the idea that you have, and then how do you develop that going on? So it's money, money, money long. Okay. Yeah. See, I don't know everything. I'm I just act like it. um Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. Hopefully, I will see you at another one of these. Also, when you go to at home songwriting courses.com, in the community, I do live workshops at least once a month. So, in the community and in the event section, you can find out when we're doing live workshops where we talk about different educational topics. And then also, check out the membership and see if that might be right for you. But I just appreciate all of you, and I thank you for coming along today. But I will see all of you the next time around. And coming up on March 22nd, um, definitely check out the co-writing challenge and see if you want to get involved and collaborate with some other at home songwriters as well. So